welcome everyone. My name is Diane Lasher-Penti, and this is...
My name is Kayla Condron.
And we work at Ellington Youth Services, and we are both been trained in psychological first aid, where we are psychological first aid responders. And I would like to make this perfectly clear. We are not training anybody here to be psychological first aid responders. We're here to give you information that hopefully will help you when people are having what we call mental health crisis, an overwhelming moment, breakout, flip out, when things get too much. These are some great tools and skills and knowledge that you can use to not only help yourself, but to help other people.
Yeah. All right, so first, what is psychological first aid? So it is an acute intervention to help children, adolescents, adults, and families in the immediate aftermath of a disaster, terrorism, and other emergencies. It is designed to reduce the initial distress caused by traumatic events and to foster short and long adaptive functioning and coping. So what all that means is pretty much when someone goes through something traumatic, these are ways to help. Psychology first aid has a focus on the community and interactions between community members to foster a healing community. Something has happened in our community, it affects us in different ways, but we are going to get through it together.
So that means that even though only maybe a few people might be immediately affected by what happened, there's a ripple effect that affects us all. Mm-hmm. And it's very important that we focus not on just the healing of one or two people, but the interaction that we all have together. And that together as a community, when we focus on our strengths, we have the power to heal.
Right. The sense of community is really huge.
So what we're going to do is break down a little bit three main things, stress, and then we'll talk about trauma and anxiety. So stress is basically, and we are all feeling it at this moment in our lives, is an external cause, and our body and our minds and our feelings are reacting to what's ever happening on the outside. So common everyday stressors for people would include, testing, work, paying your bills, getting your kids to their appointments on time, if you're a parent, all these things. Now on top of that, we've had added stress with the pandemic. There's actual financial pressures, medical, anything else you can think of that's a lot of stress in the world, pandemics?
There's a lot of stress around different communities and other people not getting along and being kind to one another, and just in general, there's just a lot of stress going on in the world.
And we're all feeling it, including myself.
Yes.
That I feel stressed out to a point of burnout sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard because we're all so focused on that stress. The media is constantly showing us what's going wrong with the world and not so much the right, and it's just taking up our lives completely.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, we're going to go towards...
Working right.
I used to want to make it. Don't do that for me.
That's how it's supposed to go.
Okay. So trauma is, I think we all know the definition of trauma is something bad happens, and it has a severe impact on what it is. And the reason why it has such a severe impact is that we have what's called core beliefs, things that we hold dear to ourselves, things that are implicit, they're unknown, but we believe. So I'm a good person. Well, if I'm a good person, then these good things will happen. The world is a safe place. And when those things when a trauma happens, it shatters them. And part of the healing process is rebuilding a new way and a new belief system in not just ourselves, but in the world around us.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you.
All right, anxiety. So I'm sure you've all heard of anxiety, know what anxiety feels like. It's just a specific reaction to stress, and its origin, it comes from internally, and it's characterized by a persistent feeling of apprehension or dread in situations that are not actually threatening. So what that's saying is just in the normal brain, or not normal, but when your amygdala in your brain is reacting to something that is stressful, someone might be reacting more so than someone else, and that could be because you have anxiety. And unlike stress, anxiety persists even after a concern has passed. It can just be in your brain for a long time with a lot of jumbled up worries in your brain for a very long period of time that can kind of intrude in your everyday life. And that's when it kind of becomes a disorder.
And it's very important to know that everybody feels anxiety. And that's why you said like a normal brain. Like typical, everyday, it's just a feeling just as much as sadness, anger, everything, excitement, joy, surprise, loved. Anxiety is there for a purpose and for a reason. But when it gets too much, just like we said, when you get too much stress, things happen. When you have too much anxiety and it gets to very high levels, you can develop a disorder. And that is very key to get help when that happens. So this kind of goes along with the trauma one. And I add this slide to anytime I talk about trauma, because if anybody has experienced a trauma and they're having a lot of feelings or it's impacting their life still, this is just a list of all these things that can treat, you can do, there's hope. So I'm not going to go through the list, but I just want to say that there is a lot of things that can happen and that hope is always there and you can heal from the trauma and move forward in life.
Yes, hope is very important. There's always hope. All right. Next.
So for the first, what they call the principle of psychological first aid is physical and psychological safety. So it's very important that you feel physically safe in order to feel psychologically safe. And it's a difficult time in this world right now because the pandemic and there's so many germs in the world, like it just sort of heightens our stress and anxiety about everything of, are we truly safe? So one of the things you have to do, and this is where it kind of goes hand in hand, is how you perceive and how you think about the world and what your interaction is affects whether or not you feel physically safe too. So for today's purposes, we're really going to focus on psychological safety, but for physical safety, there's extra help out there too. There's a lot of websites, there's a lot of great information how to feel physically safe in the world that we live in right now. Okay.
I like that
stuff. Okay, so the human brain. How the brain actually works is that we have our five senses. So the five senses are touch, taste, smell, sight, hear, right? Yes. All right, I got them all. And what do you do is with those five senses, they sort of scan the world and they take in the world and our environment around us. And then they send signals and messages up through our bodies, up to those nervous systems, up to the central nervous system, and into our brain. And it reaches what's called the amygdala. It's sort of like the safety guard, the little thing that goes through first. And the amygdala is our emotional center. And I'm going to simplify this, so if we have anybody who's really into neurobiology and you're like, what are you talking about? I apologize, but I'm just letting you know I'm kind of like simplifying this. So what happens is it goes up into there, and the amygdala determines whether or not it is a perceived threat. That's the key word, perceived. That there's a perceived threat, there's something wrong, something's not right in the world around us that we're interacting with at this moment. And when it determines that there's something wrong, it sends an automatic signal, okay, through the brain and all of a sudden right to the body, and it makes a neurochemical surge. Okay, so that is why a lot of times people say they get headaches, they get stomach aches, their muscle aches. They have, what other issues do people have?
Yeah, headache, stomach ache.
Oh, heart
breathing.
racing.
Yeah, your heart racing, shortness of breath.
Yep. And that's all because your body is preparing for this emergency, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the main chemical that we're going to talk about today that's being surged through is cortisol. And when you have high levels of cortisol, so that means like if you're living stressed out over a long period of time, that means your body, cortisol is being constantly surged through your body. And that leads to a lot of not so good things. So that affects your immune system, that could affect weight gain, memory issues, you can develop anxiety and depression and a lot of other conditions. So this is like very important to understand how the brain works, because a lot of people go, well, just feel better. Well, not when you have like this automatic surge through your body. Okay, so the reason why we're telling you this is because you have to deal with what's actually happening in your body first, and we're going to tell you lots of ways that you can help kind of calm that system down into it. Anything else I'm leaving out about that brain?
I don't think so.
And if you're really interested in learning about the brain, there's a great movie called Inside Out by Disney, Pixar.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing movie. We absolutely love it here at Youth Services. It really does simplify the brain a lot. But,
it really does.
But it really does give you a greater understanding how the brain works and how important all feelings are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Also, I just wanted to say, if at any point during this video you want to pause or like take notes or go back, please feel free to do that. That's why we did this recording this way. We want you to be able to pause and like screenshot something or take notes and be able to do whatever you need to do in this presentation.
Oh, the wonderful 5 F's. So this is very important because remember we just talked about that surge that your body's preparing. Your body's reacting, that automatic signal, your body's reacting to something. And this is interesting because everybody has a different response the way their body reacts. So if you are a family member, you're hanging out with friends, or if you interact with anybody in the world, this is very important to know and pay attention to. Okay? Because how they react and how you react and how you interact with each other can really make an impact on your relationship and communication.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get into the 5 F's?
Sure. So a good example is just if you're with your friend and you guys go through something super traumatic, like, I don't know, like a car accident or something, and you have one friend who is screaming on the top of their lungs and running around and just you have no idea what they're doing. And then you have another friend who completely freezes and just sits in silence and they just look numb. You might have someone who is just ignoring the fact that anything happened. You have someone super fidgety. These are all correct ways to deal with trauma, and they're all the different F's. And there's no right or wrong way to deal with trauma. It's just how your brain is taking in that information and then sending the signals out to your body on how to react. And an important thing to know is you brought up a very traumatic event could happen. Mm-hmm.
But you will see these reactions, especially now with this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of people are reacting this way to everyday stressors.
Right.
Because our body is so hyped up and on guard that we're having these things. So if you are a parent or family member or friend and your friend starts snapping at you, you notice that your children, your siblings, you're fighting a lot more, right? Or they are just sort of zoned out in front of the TV, that kind of stuff. Or sometimes the need for everything to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Everything just has to be just so.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way. So just kind of like pay attention to how you're reacting and other people are reacting around you, and just know that there's a reason.
Yes, and I feel like that's a huge thing with kids in the school systems right now. I mean, they're seeing what could be considered trauma, and they're going into the schools wearing masks, and it's all super different. And some kid could, after they maybe log off on their computer, could just be completely zoned out and just maybe not even remember anything that they just learned. Or the same thing goes in school. Maybe they didn't remember anything because they were just so focused on the fact that everyone's wearing masks in school and that it's kind of a scary time. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's super important that we remember that we're all going through a lot and that there isn't one right way to deal with all of this.
Right. So a good thing might be at this time to sort of like kind of do like an emotional scientist, observationalist, and sort of just take a moment and maybe in a couple days worth of notes. Like you said, journaling is a great way of doing this. But so sort of say, how are you reacting, and maybe notice how those important people in your life are reacting.
And I mean, I love doing that. I think that's very fun. I think it's really cool to just see how everyone reacts different. I think it's just something special about humans that we can all go through something very similar and just all react very differently. And it's something cool that we can observe, and it's definitely helpful to learn.
Right. And the reason why we're really putting a lot of effort into this and paying attention to this right now is because how to help yourself with coping and self-care is really important to know how you react. Where do you fall into the 5 F's? Because that makes a difference.
Right.
Anxiety can be helpful and it can be harmful. So over here on the slide that you're seeing right now is the words rigid, global, catastrophizing. I like catastrophizing. Permanent, I can say it. Internal and avoidant. So this is when you have the feeling of anxiety, and the way that why we're saying it can be harmful is that if you have this way of thinking, the way of dealing, the way of taking action in the world, and it leads towards this side, and I'm pointing to it right now even though you can't see me, the rigid, global, and permanent, that is something you can say, wait a minute, I need to kind of work on that. And what we want to get to is that yes, you're gonna feel anxiety, because like we said, it's just a feeling, and there's gonna be moments in your life that you have it, and it's supposed to be there. But we want those thoughts and those actions to be about being flexible, knowing that it's not an all or nothing. It's not like my entire day was ruined because I didn't have my favorite cereal for breakfast. It's just that moment didn't go well, but then you can still have other good moments during the day. You have problem-solving skills that we look at, it's all doomed, and say, well, wait a minute. Let's kind of like break this down. Things have the ability to change. That you seek out support systems. You look outside. You're active, and that you're open to new ideas and experiencing.
Yes. And it's also really important to talk about your anxieties and to communicate them out with someone, or if it's hard for you to do that, you could always journal and write things down. It's just super, super important to, if you have a lot of different anxieties jumbled up in your brain and different worries, to not hold that in and internalize it, to get it out and talk about it. And I promise you're gonna feel a million times better after you do that. It's just that's a really good example of self-care, is just talking about what's going on in your mind.
Okay, so how to help and have hope. So we're going to be talking a lot in the next couple of slides about self-care, and we're going to be talking about self-fairness, but also self-forgiveness, okay? And it's really important that you know that you have to care for yourself, because if you are not in the right place, you cannot care for others. Okay? So it's kind of finding what works for you, and it's the battle of not feeling worthy of self-care, okay? And it's some people are like, but I'm just so busy, I don't have time for that. But that's the whole point, that if you feel like you're so busy, you have so much expectations and things that you have to do in life, that's when it's really important to take a step back and kind of say, okay, I need to find even just 2 minutes each day. Hopefully you can find a little bit more than that, 10 minutes, to do some self-care.
And I know for me, I need to physically schedule in when I need to just do some type of self-care in my day, because I will just keep going and keep working and keep doing things and not really think about it. And I just like following a schedule. So if you're someone who's like me, it might be a good idea, if you have like a planner or agenda, just literally write out a specific time of day that you are going to practice your self-care, which could be reading for 10 minutes, just sitting and relaxing for 10 minutes, have a cup of coffee, just something. It doesn't need to be something crazy. It's just taking the time to care about yourself. Okay.
And that leads us right into self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So these concepts that you say words like calm yourself down, there's grounding, there's self-expression, there's coping skills, there's a whole bunch of ways of labeling this and talking, but it's basically just stopping and taking some time for ourselves. Okay, so it's just like we're saying this over and over again. You're going to hear this, and I'm hoping that it's going to be ingrained in your head that it's it's so important. So at this moment though, I would like you, if you'd like to, you can either write down or think about it in your head. What are 3 obstacles that stop you from doing your self-care? So we can like sing a song. Or you can just pause the video while you do this, and then when you're done, unpause it, and we'll go right to the next slide. Okay, so probably one of the things is that you just don't have time, because that's exactly what I said when I did that activity is, well, I just don't have time. I have so many things that I need to do. And so one of the things that I have to remind myself is, why is this so important? Why is self-care so important? And have an understanding of that. So what we talked about before, and this is, you're going to like kind of throughout this presentation go back and forth. But remember, okay, anxiety is about demanding certainty and control. Okay, and it will do anything to get those things and manipulate the situation around you and manipulate you to get what it wants. So it's very important for you to take steps that are new and different, to change your routine and to keep those things going. Okay, now for grounding, it actually helps soothe that nervous system. Okay, remember we talked about how cortisol is shooting through your body and your body's like prepped up and your muscles are going and you're just sort of like woohoo. Okay, so the point is that when you have that automatic response, you need to then make that decision to do something to soothe that nervous system down, calm those signals that are going to your brain that something is wrong. Okay, and then we can move forward, because there was a study and we spent 47% of our time thinking about either the past or predicting the future. So that means about half the time we're thinking not about what's happening right now in our present moment. And I say let's add on top of that all this additional stressors that we talked about that's happening in the world right now. So our numbers are probably even higher than that. So it's really important that we sort of say what is going on in the moment, because that is what we truly do have control over. Mm-hmm. And when we think about the moment, there is an initial safety about that too. Mm-hmm. So we really want to take it, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard mindfulness, and we're going to kind of get into that a little bit more. It's not the be-all to end-all, but it is something very important, and it doesn't mean that you have to sit there and meditate for 15-20 minutes. It's just focusing on the present moment without judgment, and that's all we're asking, is to start acknowledging what's happening with ourselves, acknowledging our feelings and our thoughts.
Right. And I mean, mindfulness for me, it's something I have to practice every single day, because right now I'm in the process of getting my degree and becoming a therapist. And when I am doing schoolwork, I have a very bad habit of getting overwhelmed and thinking about every single assignment that is due for the next couple months, which is not good. I shouldn't be doing that. And something I have to constantly remind myself is to just take it one task at a time and just focus on one assignment at a time. If I overwhelm myself and think about all the hundreds of assignments I'm going to have to do, I just get way overwhelmed and then I just shut down. And I think that applies to everybody when you're thinking about all the tasks and all the things in the future or in the past. It can just overwhelm your brain. And just practicing these mindfulness techniques that we'll talk about a little bit more is just very, very, very important for your mental health.
We have the ability to focus on thoughts, but when we have an anxious brain, the thoughts kind of get overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So we have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts throughout our entire day. And when you're anxious and you're stressed out, we have a hard time sort of well, what am I supposed to focus on? And they just keep bouncing all over the place. Sometimes it feels like a runaway train and the thoughts just keep going and going. Other times it's the same thought that's kind of going over and over and over again. So they're sort of like, that's why there's a net. It sort of captures the thoughts and it just sort of doesn't allow the thoughts to come and go.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a non-anxious brain, you still have the same number of thoughts. That doesn't change. Mm-hmm. It's just your ability to focus and allow the thoughts to free flow, to come in and out. So I guess you have to have a hole in your net. A really big hole.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we kind of, I remember at the beginning I said the amygdala is very important because it's how the amygdala perceives the signals that are coming into the brain, the messages that are coming in there. And this is very important. So you have to understand that sometimes those signals are sent when there really is not a clear danger, when there's really nothing wrong. It's just how we're understanding what is happening around us. So one of the skills that's very important to learn is this is when you have to kind of like take a step back and observe what's happening and look at it like, what are the facts? What is the evidence? What is really happening around me, not just based on those automatic initial thoughts and feelings that happen. Mm-hmm. And this is great if everybody wants to go on TED Talk, if they like TED Talks. Kelly McDonald talks about this, especially when it comes to stress. Mm-hmm. And there is a purpose for stress and anxiety. It's about getting your body ready for something very brave and important and meaningful. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that something bad is going to happen. It means there's something very meaningful about to happen.
Right. And she really breaks stress down in a great way and talks about the importance of connecting with others and how that plays into stress. And it's just a really, really nice way to think about stress instead of a super negative way. She kind of switches it and thinks about it in a positive way, which is not the norm and not what you think of when you think of stress. So definitely check that out if that sounds like something that interests you.
So we all know and we've heard, if you do any sort of media or anything, that exercise is extremely important, not just for our physical health, but more than ever now for our mental health. It can improve your mood, boost your immune system, and even lower your risk for future illnesses. And it shows over and over again that it increases your mental health, okay? So, but sadly, one of the first things that we stop doing when our lives start to get crazy is this exercise. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to remember why. So if you're like, oh, I just don't have time, but you have to remember, why is this so important, right? Because it increases serotonin, which makes us happier and calmer, and it decreases that cortisol, that stress hormone that we talked about before, all right? And it also increases endorphins. So if you ever hear of that runner's high, that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And this could be something like we talked about before, is scheduling in like 10 minutes of self-care or however long once a day. This could be your self-care, which could be just going for a walk. I know a lot of people right now are trying to go on walks just to get out of the house, get out of where they are, and that could easily increase your endorphins and really be a good way to help with any kind of stress, anxiety, depression. And we have so much more information about how exercise affects our mental health on our website if you want to check that out. We have a lot of great stuff on there.
It's You in Action.
Yes.
So if you're looking at our website, look for You in Action. So this is a wonderful skill that's called STOP. And basically it stands for, and remember we talked about how sometimes you just, when you have those thoughts that are happening, you need to change your perception. This is where that stop comes in, where you just take a moment, you pause, you notice what's happening, you take a breath, that deep breath, because that's going to help ground that nervous system. You observe, what are you feeling, what are your emotions, what is happening around me, right? And you pay attention and you start getting the evidence, and then you can make a better decision. You proceed with presence. So you want to be in the present moment, base it on what's happening currently, not on past fears or worries or that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's all about being in the present moment. So it's a skill. It's not easy to do. It's not something you're like, woo, I just did it in a snap of a finger. It's something to take practice. So that's just something where you might say, you know what, I really want to work on this skill. And you may not do it when something's bothering you. You do it when something good happens too. That's a great way to develop the skill, to train yourself to learn how to do that. So let's say you're about to like eat a really good chocolate chip cookie. You want to stop, notice what's happening, take a breath, smell that wonderful cookie smell, right? Observe your thoughts. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking, well, I'm hungry. I'm thinking this is going to taste so good. This smells so good. I am so happy that someone made me chocolate chip cookies. They must really care about me. I'm loved in this world because I have a chocolate chip cookie in front of me, but that's another presentation about love and eating.
Yeah, you're getting a little...
But those are your thoughts immediately. But that's what the whole point of the stop skill is that you start to observe and you notice what are your patterns and stuff, and how are you judging, how are you looking at the world around you. When you observe your true thoughts and your emotions, and you can't be afraid to say those things, what is really happening in you. Because then you could say, all right, this is awesome. I love my chocolate chip cookie, and I'm going to eat it. I perceived with presence.
Yeah, and it's like Diane said, it's super important to practice this in times of not just stress and anxiety, because if you do that, then you're just going to associate this skill with stress and anxiety and those uncomfortable emotions. Instead, when I'm sure some of you already do this with the cookie, or with if you're in some type of moment where you just feel like pure joy and happiness, I'm sure some of you do kind of stop and take in like, wow, this is a great moment that I'm having right now. And that's exactly what we're doing. You're just taking a break, you're just breathing and observing those emotions and how you're feeling in that moment.
So this is one of my favorite ones that I like to do, the 3 A's. So acceptance is similar, kind of similar to the stop, but it's a little bit more simplified. So the 3 A's is basically acknowledging, stopping and saying, oh, this is what I'm feeling, acknowledge those feelings, and then what are the reasons? Remember, I've used these words before. What is the evidence? What are the facts? And what do I want to do? Is this a good feeling? Is this a feeling that making me feel, is it like, oh, I want more of this feeling? Or is it sort of like, oh, this is really uncomfortable and I don't like this? Like a pair of shoes that are too tight, you just want to take them off if you want to get rid of that feeling. Then you come up with a plan. What is your action? What do you want to do? How are you going to deal with it? Okay?
Yeah. That's good.
It's good. So the 3 A's: accept, assess, and take action. So we kind of went through a lot of things, and there is a lot more stuff out there that you can do. So if you would like, you can just kind of pause this video right now and make a list of what works for you, what has worked in the past, what is working in the present, and maybe some things that you would like to add to your list. Okay? Then the next thing you're going to do is you make a commitment. I'm going to take a walk 3 times a week. So you look at your list saying, well, what is possible? What can I do? If you're like, well, I want to go swimming every day. Well, unless you have access to a pool or you really like cold water, that might not be possible right now. So it's sort of like, what can happen? What can I do? How does this fit into my schedule? And make that commitment. Kayla has talked a lot about a calendar and scheduling. So this is just a reminder to do that. And then I kind of made a list of other things that people can do for those grounding, soothing, coping skills.
And make sure that you're not setting yourself up for failure and feel disappointment in yourself. Don't make these lists and these schedules crazy ambitious. That's super important. Definitely take it slow, just like anything else, and kind of ease into it. I think that I did that when I first learned about self-care, is I kind of got super excited about it. It sounded amazing. I set up a schedule of way too much to do and way too much time. And that's not what this is about, because then when I didn't do it, I was disappointed in myself. And that's just the opposite of what we're trying to do. So just go easy with yourself, start slow, and just like anything else, it takes practice. Okay.
So the third principle we're going to talk about is called connectiveness. And the reason why we're talking about this, that there's a big difference between surviving and thriving. And we want to make sure that we are all thriving. And in order to do that, we really need to be connected to others.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So we need each other to thrive. Social interaction is very important. So if you watch that Kelly McDonald video, she really talked about how biologically our brain is centered around social interaction when we're in times of stress, which is kind of like the opposite of that's happening with the pandemic, because they keep telling us to isolate ourselves and not interact with anybody. Mm-hmm. But that's why everybody's having these increases of stress and anxiety and depression, is because it's going against what we naturally need in life. So we have to start being creative on how to make those social connections with others. Okay, so and it's about communicating effectively too, because if you're having those stress reactions and you're somewhere doing those 5 F's kind of thing, you're not going to be able to really communicate with others. Because I know that there's times when I have a really bad day at work and I go home and I'm still reacting to what happened at work, and then my kids come up to me for something and I might do a quick little snap. I'm just like, I can't deal with this right now. And it's sort of like, well, wait a minute. That's when I say, I need to just take a moment of self-care. I just need to take like 5 minutes to sort of like debrief, let go of what happened during the day, and become present, be in the moment for what my kids need at that time. But that's where I had to do self-care first. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're doing this, because you have to care for yourself in order to actually be effectively there for anybody else.
Right. And that's also a great way of talking about boundaries. I think you need to also, when you can, communicate with your friends and family your boundaries, and it's completely fine to set boundaries for yourself. That is another example of self-care. Just know, like for me, if I have a bad day at work and I come home and my boyfriend is immediately asking me a million questions about my day and I do not want to have that, I will just be super quiet, and then he just knows to give me like 5 minutes, and then I will be a new person. It's just knowing those boundaries, communicating with that, and just having that healthy communication with your friends and family and others around you.
And if you're finding you're having a really hard time with that, that is when you need to reach out and get some help. And
yes.
There's a lot of resources out there and places that you can get help.
Yes. Oh, also I wanted to touch on, there is a lot of trends kind of going around. It's kind of a trendy thing to know if you're like an introvert or an extrovert, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what being introverted and extroverted means. If you label yourself an introvert, that does not mean that you isolate yourself forever and don't go out and talk to anybody. Being introverted means that you just get mentally exhausted being around others, and that's completely fine. And again, you know your boundaries and how to take care of yourself in those situations. But being introverted, introverts need communication and need connection with others as well. Every human, as we talked about before, we live off of community and connection with others, and it's just as important for everybody.
So there are times that we are completely overwhelmed. So sometimes it's good to sort of just realize that so when you're completely overwhelmed and you can't even think straight, it's good to even have those written down somewhere as your 3 choices. You can, 1, take a break, okay? And it's not like, I'll just take a break, but it's sort of like during that break time, you're really giving your chance to process, absorb, and allow your nervous system to settle down. Now, number 2, you can go and ask for help for somebody. Now, you want to make sure that you are asking that person that's actually going to help you and not escalate the situation or discredit how you're feeling or making you feel even worse, okay? So this is what we call the trusted person in your life. Mm-hmm. Now, number 3 is you choose to keep trying. Now, that might mean that you're going to keep trying even when you're feeling discomfort, you're not feeling good, but that means your mindset has to change of, I am a willing participant and I'm going to go through this, and I need to remain in a certain sort of mindset in order to get through it. It's not choosing and just sitting there and going, I'm getting so frustrated, but I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to be miserable while I do it. That's not what we're talking about. So if you're doing that, that's when you're like, maybe I should take a break. Mm-hmm. And then if that's still not helping, get some help too. And like I said, sometimes it's a combination of all three.
Mm-hmm. And make sure we talk about feelings and emotions a lot. Make sure you're validating yourself and maybe your kids' or friends' emotions. Whenever these emotions arise, you need to make sure that you're not telling yourself or others that they're not supposed to be feeling those emotions, because that's very harmful for someone's mental health. And doing the opposite and validating emotions and other people's emotions, your emotions, is very, very supportive, and it can be very beneficial for others and your mental health.
Right. Remember the 3 A's? We talked about acknowledge, not deny.
Yes. Acknowledge it. Triggers.
Yes. So this is like one of those moments of self-reflection. So what are your triggers? So if you could just take a moment, write down whatever you feel comfortable with. 3 triggers, 3 things that sort of drive you nuts, get you going. And then next to it, you're going to figure out a plan on how to deal with those triggers. And then once you do that, remember these are healthy choices of triggering. So like if my trigger is I come home to a really messy house because everybody is homeschooling and nobody put away any dishes and there's food all over the counter. So that would be a trigger for me. Mm-hmm. And the way I will admit, an unhealthy way that I deal with that is I yell, slam things around while I'm cleaning the house. So when I did this exercise, I realized that was my trigger, and then I had to deal with it a healthy way, to work with my family and getting my needs and my expectations so everybody's on the same page, and getting them to buy in to helping me out. Mm-hmm. Okay, so identifying, and you also want to practice. So if I'm saying I'm going to have a calm conversation with my children, not screaming at them for not cleaning up the kitchen, then sometimes you have to practice that first.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. So my dog Jack gets talked to a lot.
Pets are amazing. We both have dogs. They both help us.
Yes, very much so. They're my little role models. So number 4 is self and community efficacy. So we talked a lot about the beginning. Kayla mentioned about the strengths of the community. This is how we can help each other. So the whole previous one is about self-care, and we want to make sure that you are first, mm-hmm. and that you're in the right place, because then that will allow you. So then you'll have that positive outlook and that you're thriving, and you're going to pass that along to other people too.
Right, and if you are a parent or a close friend with someone, more specifically a parent, if you want your kids to practice good self-care, you are their role model. And I want you to try to think about that a little bit. And if you are practicing self-care, they're going to see that, and then they're going to want to strive to also do that. And I think that's a great way to teach them about self-care without even knowing it.
So this is that perspective thing. So I think we all have seen like those, positive statements kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of finding one that really works for you and keeping it in mind, and knowing that you got to take life as a whole, everything that comes at you, and life is not supposed to be, we're not meant to be happy 100% of the time. We are not mm-hmm. meant to always have joy and excitement and everything else in our lives. That it is truly a roller coaster, mm-hmm. and there's going to be up and downs, and you're going to have those uncomfortable feelings, and that's okay. But if we know that we can handle those things, it just makes it stronger, that we can push through that and we can move forward in life.
Mm-hmm. And again, a really good movie that shows this is Inside Out. It just shows how important, in a very simple, cute way, how important it is to feel all the emotions, not just joy all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's a great way to teach kids about emotions as well. We're not sponsored.
Yes, I
know. We just really like it.
So when you are working, thinking, okay, I'm in a good spot, I'm ready to help out with my community, I'm going to be a good role model for my kids, you really want to be able to say, you know what, I can handle your big messy feelings, and we're in this together. Okay? You want to provide that acceptance and validation, because everybody wants to be heard and understood. And you cannot fix everybody. The whole point is not to be a fixer, it's just to be there for them. And sometimes that's what everybody needs, just a moment of knowing that they're understood and that someone's just kind of being present with them.
Right.
So hope is actually the fifth principle in the 5 principles. So that's, and we're going to be, hope is everything. And how you keep doing that is that you purposely engage in proactive activities. You promote the positive. You notice the small achievements and the good things in life. Like we talked about, where there's parts of anxiety, we want to be positive and say not everything is ruined, but wow, sometimes just standing in the sunshine can make me feel better for that 5 minutes, right? Just kind of like not acknowledging with a smile, or you made a really great dinner. The chicken came out right tonight. And it's how we look at things, and you're open to the possibilities. There's gratitude, and there's a great activity called Kind Wishes. You could probably Google it, where it's a type of meditation, but basically it's just something you can even write down, where you start off with, you make a wish for yourself, you wish for a family member, wish for a friend, and then you start make a wish for somebody you may not like, and then you make a wish and then it kind of grows and grows until you're making a wish for the world. And it's just sort of like, it's the whole perspective of what we're doing here is first you make a wish for yourself, focus on you, and then you can extend it out to the world when you're ready.
Yeah. And I think something with the achievements, I'm going to use this example again, is in my schoolwork, again, instead of focusing on all of the assignments I have not done, I can focus on the one assignment or even the one paragraph or the one sentence of a paper that I just wrote, and that can just help you adjust your thinking of seeing hope instead of the crazy anxiety-driven world, and look at the other way and look at hope and happiness and kindness.
That's right. So this is a great thing called the daily dose. So we talked a lot about that neurochemical surge that happens in your body. So much as there you got stress hormones, there's something actually called the 4 happy hormones. These are chemical hormones in our bodies that increases our happiness. So obviously the first one is dopamine, D. And this is your, you seek rewards, and enables you to take that extra effort to achieve them. So how do you increase the dopamine levels? Remember we talked about keeping a calendar, you chart your achievements, right? Discovering new things, and caffeine with limits, and hugs with people that are in your bubble. Or your pet is a great animal, or a cat or bird or frog or whoever you have in your life that you love. Sometimes it's really good just to get that hug. And also music. Music is very therapeutic, but you find the music that works for you. You want to do O?
So O is oxytocin, and this is your feel-good attachment. So apart from interpersonal bonding, it reduces stress levels and boosts security and contentment. It increases loyalty, empathy, and trust. And some ways that you can increase this is some positive social interaction, practicing empathy, smiling, touch again, so a hug, holding a hand, massage, yoga. These are all different ways that you can increase this. And I mean, practicing empathy I think is huge, especially right now. It's just looking at someone and just trying to be empathetic and just think that that person is not me, and I have no idea what they're going through or how they're feeling right now, and just trying to be empathetic to one another. And sometimes this is super hard. I know it is for me sometimes, but practicing that and practicing trust can really increase this oxytocin.
And that brings us to S for serotonin. And this is your positive self-esteem, inner satisfaction, your confidence, your sense of purpose. So how do you increase it? You look at all your past achievements and success. You keep a gratitude journal. You go out into the sunshine, okay? What is your place in the community? What is your purpose? What do you do to give help or assistance to others, right? So feeling significant and important. So this is really, it could be very simple. Like when I come home from work, my dogs are at the door greeting me, and it gives me a huge smile. It's that, you know, I have a purpose. I'm here to care for them. So the same thing when you think about it with your kids. Everybody needs to feel that they're part of something. They're part of the family. And it's sort of like, what role does everybody have? So it's sort of like creating an environment where everybody feels important, essential.
Mm-hmm. All right, next is in your endorphins. So this is your determination and bliss hormone. So it elevates mood and reduces physical pain and emotional stress. It also influences your cognition and level of focus and precision. So some ways that you can increase this is exercise, like we talked about earlier, having that runner's high. Laughter, laughing with friends. I'm sure you've all been in that scenario where you just are laughing so hard that you can't breathe, and after you just feel so happy and blissful. That is your endorphins kicking in. And dark chocolate.
Okay, yeah, that was mine. It's actually true, though. It's actually very true. So,
yes.
Okay. So a lot of people are going, wow, that's a lot of information. How on earth am I going to fit that into my schedule?
Yes.
You can very easily do a daily dose. Like for me, when I look at this, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I like to take part of my exercise, my endorphins, is I go take a walk. Mm-hmm. So I make sure I take at least one walk inside the sunshine. So I got endorphins, I have serotonin. And then for the O, I might go take a walk with my dogs. I might go take a walk with my kids, with my husband. So there's my good attachment, interpersonal bonding. And then because I'm charting to make sure that I keep up with my walking, I check off my achievement right there. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I might do a lap with my family, and I might do a lap with listening to some music that I really like. So within 10, 20 minutes, I've got my daily dose of happy hormones.
It's that easy.
It can be that easy.
I know that's a lot of words right there, but like Diane just said, it could literally just be 10 minutes of your day. You just did your daily dose. All right. So we're going to bring us to our last slide here. We have our resources to support mental health and wellness. So we know that it can be super overwhelming to reach out and get some kind of support, and you are welcome to contact us at Youth Services. We have our number and then my email right there, and we will be happy to walk through with you any kind of process to try and get some help. And if it's some type of crisis situation, we have the crisis numbers and hotlines right there. If you want to take a screenshot of this, we have this image on our website that you could download for yourself. All of these hotlines are super important and really beneficial to have. I know that for a lot of teens, taking down that crisis text line is really beneficial because they sometimes don't want to speak to an adult, and maybe when they're in crisis, that text line could be super beneficial and really good for their mental health. And then lastly, we have some local counseling agencies listed. If you do not know, we have lots of stuff around us, lots of places that are here to help you.
And if you don't see something on those lists, please definitely reach out to us,
yes.
And we can make sure we find something that actually fits your needs at the moment.
Yes, this is just what we could fit on here.
Yes, there's a lot of other places.
There's so much out there. And again, it's why there's so much out there. It can be even more overwhelming with all of that being out there. So we are here to help.
Well, thank you. And Oh, well, I don't know if I want to hear from you or not.
I know. Yes.
No. Please call. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening this long. If you're still listening, for hanging with us.
Yes, and we're going to be doing a lot more videos, so please visit our website, pay attention, follow us for more information.
Yes. Make sure to follow our social media. Thank you.